So as you can see, this is a long episode. Breaks the world record. Pastor with No Answer world record. The reason being that at the beginning, I give a little tribute to my patrons, and I say a lot of funny stuff, and it takes a really long time. I think it's funny, but if you're a new listener, for your convenience, I have chapter markers. So if your podcast app supports chapter markers, you can just click it like you would from one song to the next, except it's one part of the podcast to the next. It'll go from the intro to my conversation with my buddies to my conversation with Kate. You're welcome.
You've created this invisible causal web that that you don't understand your own actions in. And then every truly terrible thing is then supposed to do what John Piper suggested in his book, Don't Waste Your Cancer, which I cannot tell you how many people gave me.
Wait a second. He has a book called Don't Waste Your Cancer? I knew about Don't Waste Your Life. You're being serious.
Oh, I am all of the serious.
Don't waste your cancer.
Yo. How you doing? Hope everybody's all right. Are you? Seriously. Like, tell me, are you? So I am home. My kids are home, and it's a school day. Well, a Charleston snow day is upon us. Now, let me tell you about a Charleston snow day. Here's the forecast for today. It may rain some ice tonight. But yes, we are shut down, folks. That's how we do things in Charleston. Flurries out. We are out of school, out of everything. Shut down the bridges. I saw a snowflake. Oh my gosh. Yes, it does sound crazy, Midwesterners, but it also sounds crazy when you check on me and my family when a tropical storm is coming through. Just want to make sure you guys made it. That shows that you don't really have a comprehension of storms. So, there. I am very delighted. My friend Jed Payne texted me yesterday about the new Pedro the Lion album, my favorite artist, Dave Bazan, and he surprise dropped an album yesterday. And oh my gosh, it got me thinking. Back in 1998, I ordered Hard to Find a Friend, his first full length, and I put a check in the mail and I sent it. I mean, this person could just take my money and run with it, never send me a CD. No, I mean, I can't really email them. I didn't have like real good access to email. So check this out. I literally ordered a CD, Hard to Find a Friend, and got it about a year later. I ended up having to, finally email had progressed a little bit in that year. So I emailed the guy who managed that. I think it was made in Mexico, and he finally sent it. But I sent him snail mail also. It was crazy. And now Mr. Jed sends me a link. I click on it and I start listening to it right away. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. All right. So I'm getting into all kinds of stuff here. I'm sorry if this is a bother to you. I used to do this on Bad Christian podcast. I'd call this bringing some popcorn. It's just a bunch of little things. Popcorn, baby. All right. So I watched a documentary that I think you need to check out because it's just really, really good. If you like documentaries, you'll like this. It's called MLK FBI. I love it. It was really good. Very nicely done historical depiction of the great man that Martin Luther King was, how the FBI, they were against him, trying to shut things down, racism in America. It was freaking unbelievable documentary. And honestly, my respect and honor level of Martin Luther King deepened. I really feel like I have kind of a better glimpse of him. Learned a lot I did not know. But what I also like about this documentary is the dichotomy that it represents by telling the story of Martin Luther King, one of the greatest in our countries, maybe the greatest in our country. One of my heroes also had many adulterous affairs during all that time. During all that time. And for some people, it's like, okay, write them off. Not even realizing that you do the same thing. It may not be sex with other women, but you have similar patterns. You find something that you like, is not good for you, but you just got to do it more and more and more and more. And I'm not saying that you're right in the middle of that, but I'll put it this way. We all have that potential. I have that potential, and I've walked that road before, actually. Oh, man, it's a good one. It's a good one. So my favorite show is Little House on the Prairie. And you can make fun of me. That's fine. But the star of that show, Melissa Gilbert, I follow her on Instagram, and I love this. I had to share it with you. She said, "What is a dictum? A dictum is when you act like a dick, then act like a victim about it." Isn't that awesome? I think it's super, super funny. All right, so let me tell you a few ways that you guys can connect with us. Listenership, bring it in. All right, we've got a patron family. Let me tell you about that. All right, but before I tell you about the patron PWNA lifestyle, and yes, it is a lifestyle, my friends, I want to tell you who my patrons are. Now, before I do that, finally going to get this done. I have a friend named Wisket. Yes, his name is Wisket. That's his hip-hop name. He thinks he's a hip-hop star. He does have a few downloads on YouTube. Literally a few listens, actually. Not downloads. Anyway, he's been wanting to come on this podcast forever. He's been bugging me like crazy. I'm like, dude, what are you going to bring to the table, Wisket? It's probably the meanest thing I've ever said to someone. And I'm sorry. Let me publicly confess that. I shouldn't have said that. But he's tough. He said, dude, just let me read something on the show, dog. So he talks like that. He thinks he's funny. He's not, but this is the best way of getting him in on the show, is just letting the dude read out names. Now, the two things that I wanted him to do was to recognize people who had given me over $100 already. And I said, recognize them somehow. And he's just so excited about his idea. He said, I'm going to call them some BFF. I was like, all right, man, you do that. You call them BFF. And then there's 4 of you that have been giving me money since 2017. And I told Wisket to recognize you too. So thank you all very much. And here's Wisket. He's already recorded this thing. So here you go, as he recorded it.
Yo, what's up, dumbasses listening to the dumbass saying he got no answers, you still listening. All right, I'm gonna read these names, man. Whisk it out. Whisk it in. All right, Andy Kraft. Macaroni and cheese, motherfucker, 2017, dog. All right, and BFF, we got Ashley Carroll. That's 2 first name girl. We got Ashley Monk, 2 first name girl. All right, we got Austin Hill, BFF, 2017, dog. All right, we got Bo Carnes. Sounds Hollywood. You go see that Bo Carnes movie? All right, we got Dan Archer. Probably at Outback Steakhouse right now. BFF. We got Brock Bennett. We got Bronwyn Cole. Yo, that's Jake Cole's aunt. Yo, she's almost a BFF. I think right under 100 share, man. Might as well say it. Camden Perez, BFF 2017. We got Chad Johnson. We got ourselves some Chris Abbott, 2017, dog. BFF, longest running patron. Yo, we got Christian Aguilera. Christian R. Curry, dog. Alright, we got like some David Lloyd Zink. The hell kind of name it? We got David Treadwell, dog. That's a BFF. We got Davis Johnson. We got D.D. Guest. We go way back, man. We got Dominic Regurio. Yo, we got ourselves. We got Aaron. Her name Aaron. We got Jacob Landis. Yo, we got Jacob Scott Moore. Hey, check this out, boy. Let me back up to Jacob Landis. Check this out. As in Jacob Landis playing. Landis playing. Alright, dog, we got Jacob Scott Moore. I want Jacob to give me more money. Bling, bling. I got, Javier Arroyo. I got 2 Jins up in this. Jen. And they don't share their last names. What's that, a Jen problem? You don't share your last names? So we almost finished off. We got Jerry Roselle. Jerry's brother. It's Tom. Tom be kicking his ass every day. Yeah, Tom and Jerry. Oh yeah, by the way, one of them Jins, BFF. Alright, we got Joey Ruh. As of this past month, he had to drop out, don't know why, but the homeboy has been supporting me for a while. Wanted you to know that. We got John Alexander the Great. we got Jonathan Pearson. I ain't lying now. Do some research. Look up your name. Used to be an old school Christian singer back in the 90s, baby. We got Juan Mendoza. We got Justin Adams, dog. We got Chrissy Joy, dog. We got Logan Robinson, dog. We got Logan Wood, dog. Oh, shit. Juan, BFF. Chrissy, BFF. I just had to back up. You know what I'm saying? Boy, I better be watching my language, man. So, Chrissy Joy, BFF. Logan Robinson. We got Logan Wood. BFF, baby. We got, shit, boy. Most popular name up in this thing? Luke. Shit, boy, we got 3 Luke. Luke Harris. Luke Roddy. And shit, boy, we got Luke Shoemaker. Shit, boy. Hey, hit me up, man. I'd like to discuss you. I'd like to discuss with you. Maybe we can work out a deal and I can give my patrons some shoes, man. Let's work that out. Alright, we got Marco Aloha. It's like aloha. Shit, boy. Up in Hawaii. Alright, we got Matt Oxley. We got Matthew. We'll see about that. Oh, yeah, shit, boy. Marco. BFF, baby. Alright, we got Micah Don. It sounds like a dinosaur, boy. You a brontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the Micah shit, boy. We got Nolan Hammer. All his kids be nails. We got Paul Edgar, 2 first names, son of a bitch. Hey, check this out. Paul Edgar give me, excuse me, give my boy Joey $100 bill. Shit, boy, $100 bill every single month. We gonna have Joey better have him on soon to find out why that dumb why that guy is even doing that. Why is he throwing all that money away? Alright, so get back on this. Oh yeah, man, we got Peter Morse. We got Melena. Yeah, Melena. Shit, wait. Melena Wins Raphael. We got Rob Poole BFF, Robert Ether BFF, Roger Kellogg's like the cereal. Except it's not plural, it's like Kellogg. BFF Ryan Davis. BFF. Shit, boy. We got Seth Bledsoe. We got Stephen Bledsoe. Oh shit, boy. I forgot to say to Melina Weens Raphael, Goose Teeth, motherfucker. Shit, boy, I forgot to tell you that. Alright, so we got Stephen Bledsoe, like I said. We got Steve and Adele Densham. Shit. Steve and Adele Densham. Then we got Tim Chu. If you were in a fight, oh shit, let me start that joke over. If I'm ever in a fight, how was I gonna say that? Oh, check this out. This is what Tim Chu says. Hey, yo, if ever I were in a fight, you can call me Tim Chu on that. We got Travis Big Bad Wolf. Big bad Travis Wolf. We got Trisha Quinn. And we got Zach. Yo, let's get out now for real.
Guys, I'm so sorry about that. If you listened through to that, oh my gosh. And this is the last time. He's going to bug me about this forever if I don't say this. He said, go to my GoFundMe. He's putting out a demo. So just search Whisket and let's forget about this. My gosh. So current patrons, I do want to let you know that if we don't have your street address, we can't send you a sticker. And for those of you that are at a giving tier where t-shirts are due to you, please don't worry. We will be sending t-shirts for sure. And okay, so we support an online, I just call it a giving group, man. It's a nonprofit called DonorC. And I just went online to use some patron money, and we literally paid for a CT scan. This is for people in developing countries. Paid for a CT scan of a baby that needed a CT scan, was in a lot of pain. They got to get to the bottom of what's going on. All right, now, I shouldn't say we paid for it. There was money left, and we went ahead and met that need. All 3 of these people had put a good bit of money down, and we just took it over the edge, about 40 or 50 each project. We helped a kid go to fashion school, and we helped a young man start a tortilla business. How about that? So DonorSeed.com, you should check it out. We have a discussion page. Now, this is for everybody, not just patrons, but a discussion page on Facebook. And I asked a question that I was pretty interested about what you guys would say. And it was basically, does God need, let me just read it word for word. One of the weirdest things to me, and I used to believe God did God need an adversary for us to have real choice to choose him? 40 people said no, including myself, and 4 people said yes. Let me read one comment by Garrett Hancock in a Renew podcast I listened to earlier. Greg Boyd, when asked why God wasn't more direct in interacting with us, said, and this is paraphrased, that if God were more direct with us in his interaction, it would almost be forcing our hand into choosing him. How could we not choose him if we've seen him so clearly and his power and the implications of these interactions? So in my eyes, all we really need in order to choose God is for God to be slightly askew to our sight, like the mirror lit dimly, or the fogged piece of glass. So no, in my eyes, evil is not necessary. Pretty interesting. So we have that kind of stuff going on all the time. Sometimes I ask people what their favorite colors are. We do like a colors survey. And there is a podcast feed just for you. It's called PWNA Raptured. All right. So for example, this Kate Bowler interview, oh my gosh, they've had this for a couple of months now. So check it out. There's also some exclusive stuff that I put on there that I'll never release, including some devotions PWNA style. And last but not least, I'm just going to say it. The Boom Boom Room is coming. Yes, sir. All patrons will get to be a part of the Boom Boom Room, because the Boom Boom Room is coming. Okay, so, oh my gosh, Kate she's like the realist. I usually will take an interview, take the audio, and I'll erase a bunch of dumb shit I say that really doesn't matter to the conversation. And every now and then a guest will go into some territory that's not pertinent or to the conversation or very interesting. I barely touched this conversation. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. It's awesome. Before that, I talked to 2 close friends of mine. And I want to go ahead and say that if any of you are sensitive to racial jokes, you may not want to listen to this. One of my best friends that will be a part of the conversation is a black man, and best friends joke around. So if that would be a sensitive thing for you, maybe just skip over that part. But here's my friend Hayne. Here's my friend Robbie. And right after that, it'll be Kate Powler. Hayne, I want you to share a story real quick. So on 2 weeks before Christmas, I released an episode it was my friend Ryan. I always go by her maiden name, Fuller. And her mom passed away on Christmas. I had someone reach out to me and basically said, thank you. This is a testimony. Thank you for releasing that. I was very hesitant to listen to it. My wife died a year ago on Christmas Day. I was like, oh my gosh. So he's listening to this as like perspective and everything. And I was like, wow, that's not cool that you lost your wife, but I'm glad that you were able to listen and not feel alone. Hayne, it's crazy. Like, you told me something that blew me away, and it's really, huge tragedy. Holy cow. It is, like, no doubt. On Christmas Day. Yep. So Christmas Day. So with my work, obviously emergency services doesn't cease to, they're on the job on holidays. It's not like, oh, Easter, Christmas, 4th of July, you get screwed. No one's showing up. We're definitely working. So I was on duty Christmas Day, Christmas Day, the entire shift. And I had just listened to Joey's podcast with Ryan. And we show up to work. I cooked a huge breakfast for the guys. We're eating this delicious Christmas breakfast, and we get toned out to a chest pains. That was it, chest pains. As we are en route, it gets upgraded to cardiac arrest. Patients in cardiac arrest, dispatch says, we are currently with the caller talking them through CPR.
And that's common. That sort of thing happens. So I dispatched another unit to come so that we can do what we call tag team CPR. We show up, walk in this really small apartment, and there's two ladies. It's a mother and a daughter. The mother is on the ground. She's turning pale. The daughter has been trying to give her chest compressions. We walk in, my guys jump on it immediately. I focus my attention on the daughter to get information. I want to know, what's her health history, la, la, la. So she's giving us those details. My guys are working her, and the daughter is just sitting here mortified. This is 8:30 in the morning, Christmas morning.
Gosh, that's crazy.
I sit down beside her.
So, I mean, she's thinking I'm going to get up and open presents.
Dude, she told, saying? Oh, totally. So, and there were presents still wrapped at this little Christmas tree.
Oh my gosh.
And once I got the data I needed, I'm like, okay, I need to engage with you person to person. And I looked at her and I said, hey, let's you and I get out of this room. Let's go take your dogs for a walk. You don't need to see this happening with your mom right now. And she said, absolutely. So we walk out her apartment. She just starts to bawl. And I just put my hand on her back and I just said, I'm so sorry. And she said, we were talking about what Christmas movies we were going to watch today together, when she literally went into cardiac arrest right in front of her and then fell over into the floor. And I said, well, do you have any family? And she said, no. She said, it's just my mom and I. We've lived together for 10 years. My brother passed away of a heart condition when he was 43. And I said, well, do you have any friends here in the apartment complex? Any friends locally? And she said, I do, but they're all gone for Christmas. And just this heavy, heavy moment of walking with her in that. And then we have a great organization in our county that will send a counselor and meet with her, which that counselor did, which was huge. But man, just an unbelievable. As we were walking, Joey, and I was thinking about Ryan's story and that whole podcast, I looked at this poor woman and I thought her Christmases will never be the same again. I don't even know if she can even celebrate Christmas again, at least in the way she always has.
Right. I mean, imagine just waking up on Christmas morning. I mean, from now on, it's just, golly.
Yeah, that memory will be there.
That is intense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome show, guys. I don't know how to transition out of that one. Hey, I'm serious. It's probably illegal for you to track her down. Like, I'd love to give her some patron money, or you probably can't do that.
It is possible. Let me go through my avenues I have to run through and see if I can connect with her. And it could be a possibility. So that's something we'll, off air work on together.
Yep. Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect.
I just have to pause right there because Joey, man, it's been too long since I've been around you.
All right. So let me explain to you what is going on. Most of you know that I'll sit down with two of my friends and just crank out an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of content. And then I just spread it out through some episodes. Well, I was putting this episode together, and one of the conversations I had with Robbie and Hayne, I was just throwing that at the beginning, but then it hit me that the three of us had a very emotional conversation about grief, and how fitting would that be to put into this episode. So what I did is I went into our first conversation where we ended up at the end mentioning grief, and that's what you just heard. Now what you are about to hear is our second conversation, in which we talked a hell of a lot about grief, and all three of us cried a little bit about that. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's been a long time since I've been around you in person, Joey, but I always forget how pastoral you are. Just naturally all the time.
Sweet.
You sharing that story about wanting to reach out to a girl that you don't know, to give her money that you've raised, to help support her. And your heart is broken for her in the midst of her grief. And I remember when I first started working for you, it was like,
don't say that. That makes me uncomfortable. You were working with me. Seriously.
When I was working with you.
You shouldn't say that as a black man.
When I was working for you.
To a Charlestonian white man.
When I was first working for you, I'm just playing. No, no, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. No, when I was first working with you in Charleston, I think it was 2 months after my grandma died. I think it might have been sooner than that, but
I think it was sooner, honestly.
Yeah, and like we didn't have like much of a friendship yet, you know. And I just remember, you know, you called me and asked if you could. I had to leave work. I think we were in the middle of a staff meeting, and I said, my grandma's dying right now. I need to go to her house. And I went over there, and you texted me and you said, can I come over? And I said, no, I think we're all good, because you know me, I'm always like, yeah, I'm good,
right.
I'm good,
right.
You know. And you texted me again, and you said, I'm not really asking. I just really want to be there for you and your family right now. And I said, oh,
wow, that's kind of pricky. Kind of pricky. I'm not really asking.
You know, but it was like, you know, it was the way to communicate with me for sure. And I was like,
gotcha. Okay.
He wants to be there for me, you know,
Gotcha.
and which takes a long time for me to register something like that. And so, I think you called me or something, and you're like, do you guys need anything? And I said, no, I'm about to pick up lunch right now. And you said, don't pick up lunch, stay with your family. And he came over and brought like a whole feast of food for all of my extended family. And then he talked to everyone in the house the whole day. He didn't know anybody. And he just talked to everyone in the house the whole day. And I was like, who is this guy? You know, like, I was like, it's just so crazy. Like people that, you know, knew us forever, like didn't do that, you know? So,
well, I love you, but you're making me uncomfortable. So you can stop.
You're blushing. I mean, you're blushing, Joey. I can actually see it.
Here's something weird that I didn't keep from you, but I just never thought to tell you, that every single time I hear, I know you know who Chance the Rapper is, but I don't know if you're familiar with this song, but he's got a song say, you don't want no problem with me.
Yeah.
And he says, there's going to be some dreadhead N-word in the lobby. Dude, I was just listening to Chance on the way to your house. Every time I hear that song, I remember that day. Isn't that crazy?
The association. Oh my God.
I know.
That is hilarious.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Hey, by the way, just sitting here looking at this, we look like DC Talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious who Robbie is. I'm thinking you're Toby Mac, Joey. Does that make me Kevin?
Yeah.
Does that make me Kevin?
That's great, man.
Toby Mac. That's throwback. That's awesome.
Hey, speaking of not hanging out in a while, Robbie, have you finished Cobra Kai 4?
Dude, I've been meaning to text you about it. I haven't finished it yet, but I've been slowly like watching it and kind of waiting for the family, because I just want to binge it, but like, you know, it's one of the shows that we're watching together. So
gotcha.
I'm almost there, but it's so good. Do you like it?
Oh, I love it. Now, before I move on, we may have to leave Hayne out of this one. Have you seen Cobra Kai?
No.
Okay, please be quiet.
My son has.
Quiet.
Okay, I'm shutting up.
All right. No, you'll be able to give some insight in this. Robbie, I just love what Johnny's character represents in today's society. And what I mean by that is he is the most inappropriate, politically incorrect person.
Yeah.
And my kids, who are very liberal, very, very much so politically correct, love him. Like they just think he is the funniest person. And I was thinking about that. I was like, how do they even get away with Johnny saying the D word for lesbians? Like how do you even get away with that? And I think I know why. Like in The Wedding Singer, there was a lot of womanizing, and that was funny. We're taking advantage of women. I watched a movie last night at my parents' house because I stay up later than them. It's called Adventureland. I've seen it before. It's great. And they've got a special needs guy, and the guy literally calls him the R word. This is 2008.
What?
Like that just should open our eyes how far we've come and how quickly that we've come. And I think some of it is a little bit sensitive.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is that with Cobra Kai, we're laughing at Johnny. Like we're not laughing at the lesbian that he speaks, like we're like, how, oh my gosh, it's hilarious how off he is. Like that's who we're laughing at.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that my girls love him, because I always want my girls and my boys to see people first. Like people, they have a story, they have a journey. Right. They're the way they are because of some stuff that was out of their control. Yeah. But I just love it. Like it just hit me. I was like, my girls love Johnny. That's great.
I love Johnny too. Actually, like I was a big Danny fan in the old movies, but then like honestly, I think Danny is a jerk in this series half the time. I'm like, Danny, take a seat, man. Right. Like, get to know Johnny. Like,
Right. You know it's so flawless though, and I'm so impressed with Ralph Macchio, is with Johnny, we didn't get any backstory. We didn't get into his life at all in the Karate Kid trilogy. We did with Daniel. He is flawlessly playing what an adult Daniel would be.
Yes.
I mean, cheesy, stupid, hot-tempered. I mean, he is an adult. It's perfect.
Right,
it's just so neat, man. It's so neat.
So good.
Yeah, Robbie, you mentioned grief and all that stuff, and knowing that I was going to talk to you and coming up on, February and stuff. Yeah, I really do think about you a lot. I should text you when I do, especially when it comes to losing your best friend. Was it 2018 or 17? I think 17.
I think it was 2017.
Yeah, 2017 on your anniversary, right? Your wedding anniversary. Were you guys out on your anniversary? When I'm getting choked up.
Yeah. So actually, it was a Sunday. It was he was at church with us that morning.
Yeah.
And we went to lunch after that, and then I hugged him because he was going to work. He was a paramedic. And he went to the beach first, of course, on his motorcycle. And then on his way to work is when he got in the wreck. And Elizabeth and I had just gotten home because, we hung out with all of our small group folks all day, We just got home, and Carissa and Michelle had set up our whole house, like with these signs that said happy 1 year anniversary. And like they bought us a new cake, like our wedding cake, because ours was spoiled in one of the hurricanes. And so they bought us this new wedding cake for us to try the year afterwards. And we sat down to take the first bite. My mom was sitting on the couch because she was staying with us. And Priscilla called us. And she said, Bronson's in the hospital. You need to get here now.
Sorry. It's hitting me hard too, man.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't.
I was just going to bail you out.
It's okay. I wasn't expecting to cry. But
are we still talking about Cobra Kai?
We've moved on, dumbass. The dude's crying, you mother. Jeez.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I'm just trying to lighten the air. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. But yeah, so that was the day of our 1 year anniversary. And that's basically when we all moved into the hospital for 8 days.
Right.
Our church, our small group, was there every day, praying for Bronson and praying for other people in the hospital too that we just saw, and just trying to pray for his spirit and believe, that God would heal him. And 8 days later is when he passed. And so, yeah.
And that is, and I've talked about it before, but they may not, the listeners may not tie it to who we're talking about right now. That is the time when I said, I'm okay with saying I have no idea how prayer works. Like, I'm okay with that now. Yeah. Like, I used to struggle with it, but I'm like, I have prayed and believed for so many people that have died.
Yeah.
I'm cool with saying, I don't know. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to pray. It just means I don't know how in the world it works.
Right.
And I don't know why God seems to answer some people's and doesn't seem to. And so, I mean, you could probably convince me to, not bypassing the personal relationship, but when people talk about what is it called when a God makes everything but then kind of goes off to the side? I forgot.
A deist.
Deist. I see where they're coming from, and I'll tell you this. This was unbelievable. And Robbie, you know who this is, but I won't say his name. We're talking fully evangelical, fully fundamentalist, Baptist background, pastors of big church at Seacoast. He had the same situation. And I'm literally talking to this guy that, believes all the stuff that I came from. And he said the same thing. He's like, I don't know if God does anything like when we pray, like because he was at that vulnerable of a place when tragically lost somebody at his church. But it's just, I do not know. So like now like you don't ever get over it and you don't ever move on, but is it easier? Like, are you in a season where for coming up on, oh my gosh, 5 years?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, grief sneaks up on you, and it looks for a way out. It looks for a way to be expressed, whether you try to force it, down or like try to hold it in or not. It's going to find a way out. It needs to find that way. And so it's crazy because as you allow yourself to grieve, then it doesn't become easier, but it becomes more bearable, And I think for me, when it comes to Bronson, there was I'm super introspective all the time, like too much. But I try to evaluate like that relationship a lot. And I think that there was like the friendship intimacy. There was a lot of like openness, like from the beginning, with each other. Like there was just like, there was love, there was intentionality, there was lots of things like, there was common bond. I mean, he did everything with me. It was like, we were musicians together. We were youth leaders together. Like, let
me intervene real quick, because you're not going to say this about yourself, but I think it's like it's person sort of stuff. Like you had found a friend, like a friend that you do everything together, who didn't see you as someone that is going to guide them and lead them, and help them. You're like, I finally have a best friend that doesn't need me for that.
Right.
Like we just need each other.
Yeah.
We're on equal playing fields.
Yep. That's very true. Sweet. And like we started small group together and co-led and all this stuff. It just was like, it was really tough. But I think what I've realized over the years, especially through therapy, is that I can trust other people, and like I can learn to do that with other people. That same level of trust can be afforded to other people, not necessarily all at the same level or whatever, like, but I can feel out these other relationships, especially like I have a lot of trouble with male relationships. So like, but like other male relationships, I think that's common for guys anyway, but like other male relationships, I can learn to trust. I can learn to be the first person to be vulnerable and open up that, because really deep down inside of us, we all kind of want that. We all need that kind of human bond, but there's so much fear and stigma that stops us from that kind of connection. So I would say like with that loss, I still would not wish it on myself, but with that, I've been able to learn and experience things that have made my life better. It's made me a better human. It's matured me a lot in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
Bronson,
hey, how did he pass?
Motorcycle accident.
Okay.
Oh, and dude, it just 30 miles an hour, I think, Robbie. I mean, it's just unbelievable that he died.
Oh,
I think it was he hit the truck at the worst possible part of the truck.
Yeah.
Because
I see it frequently. In my work.
Yeah. His partner had to go get him. Like he was on his way to work as a paramedic, and he never came in, so his partner actually was called to the scene.
Oh,
Rob Edgerton.
God.
This is probably a really, really dumb question, but when you hear the word grief tossed around, do you put you and Erica in that category currently with what y'all are going through? Like, are y'all going through grief?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, just in case a listener hasn't heard us talk about this, Erica, my wife, is battling breast cancer right now. She's battling advanced breast cancer. And when we first got the diagnosis, which had been this summer, on June 7th, which I'll remember that day forever, we went into a dark hole of grief for, I'd say a solid 3 weeks. I can remember coming out of that, and there's language we used, like, we literally, we felt like we were in the valley of the shadow of death.
Right.
Because her cancer was so advanced and there were so many question marks that were trending towards, very, not much longevity. Thankfully, that's a different narrative right now. She talked about when we got a better narrative, she said, I felt like we've been in the belly of the whale for 3 weeks, which, it definitely felt that way. So there was a very, very deep grief, and we still have some grief, even though we have, a much better prognosis now. And even though we have so much more hope, when you go through something like that and you're still carrying it, like 5 years later for you guys with the loss of Bronson, you'll never be the same. You'll never be the same. It's a shock wave of pain that hits you. I'm actually robbing that from a documentary on Netflix we just watched, where a woman talked about the loss of her partner, and it was immediate. He was in an accident, and she said it was a shock wave of pain and grief, and I knew at that exact moment I would never be the same. And that has been our experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that Bronson because I didn't get near as close as him and Robbie. I would say for me, when he passed, obviously very, very sad, but my grief immediately went to his parents, who honestly, after that week, I had probably gotten to know them even more, than Bronson. So that grief. I do want to say this, episode 150. If you've never listened to another episode of Pastor with No Answers, or if you want to know what this show is about, listen to 150, because we have Bronson's dad on there, and it is the epitome of this show. It is a guy who basically says, everything that I was taught, everything did not work, and now I don't know what to do with any of my faith. And he still believes. He's like, Lord, I believe, but just help me, because everything I was taught, everything just blew up in my face when my son died.
That's been my life experience the last 8 years for sure.
Yeah. I think, Hayne, you had said something to me about some stupid things that people have said to you guys in this season. Like,
I'm sure you guys have experienced them too. But first off, I want to undergird all of that with this, because I may get a little animated, because some of the pain will come up and well up. But I want to make this the foundation. Almost everything nutty we've heard, we have to come to the place where we realize we are a culture that does not do grief well and does not do death well. And we don't know what to say. We've never learned how to do grief well. I listened to David Brooks, who grew up as a Jewish, talk about Shiva, sitting Shiva.
Did you say he grew up a Jewish? He was a Jewish? I'm going to call you out.
He was a Jewish.
A Jewish person.
Man. Yeah. He was a Jewish man. Yes. He grew up in Judaism and talked about just the wisdom of Shiva. And it wasn't until he became older that he realized the wisdom, which is basically shut the up. When someone's suffering, don't say anything. And don't bring up the grief unless they bring it up in the moment. So that being said, some good advice I had gotten a long time ago was, when people say dumb things, just know that what they're trying to say is, I love you.
Right.
I love you. I care about you. I care about the situation. I don't know what to say. I've never been taught in my culture how to do this well. And so I hear these crazy things, that I've heard for years now. And I want to come from that place of they care and they love. But I told Erica 4 weeks ago, if I hear one more person say, God's got this, or God's going to rock this, I think I'm going to punch them in the face. Like, I can't handle that right now. The most beautiful thing that was said was a priest here in our town who we're friends with. She wrote us a card, and all it said was, love surrounds you, God is with you. And in that moment, we just we lost it. Our kids were like, what are y'all crying about? And we held this card up and we said, of all the things that we've been told, this is true. This is true. Love surrounds us and God is with us.
Yeah. God's got this. How do you know? You know what I'm saying?
And then,
like, how do you know?
And there's a context there. We could say that, God is with you. God's got you.
Sure.
God's got you. But I just know from the context of the relationships and the congregations they're involved in, it is this will be beaten. God will end this. God will beat this. But at the same time, what do we do with a Bronson that passed away in a motorcycle ride? What do I do with my dear friend Emmett Stallings, who was a father of a 5-year-old, beautiful wife, died of esophageal cancer and fought for 1.5 years. And there were people all over the world praying for him. So I'm just going to using that phrase. We're picking it out. God's got this. God has us. I believe that.
Yep.
But is God going to end this? Is God going to heal the suffering? Is God going to fix this particular thing?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
And
when I hear God's got this, it rubs me the wrong way also. But I will say that if it represents a trust in God, no matter the circumstances, then that, I can get with that, because I don't want to ever let go of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always want to be like, I'm having the hardest time, but I'm going to try to trust. But I don't think that's what they're saying. They're saying, just believe and everything's going to be okay. And it's almost a little bit dismissive.
Enough.
It's almost
believe
dismissive.
enough. It is dismissive.
Oh,
and have enough faith.
Yep.
If we have enough faith, you'll be delivered from this cancer. And man, my human experience of 42 years is I weave in and out of faith all the time. If I'm really being honest. And if it's about me having enough faith, I mean, dude, that has so many implications onto coercing God to do things. Now we're moving into prosperity gospel things that just snowballs into this crazy thing.
Hey, and this will drive you crazy, Robbie. I don't even know if you knew that this happened, but near the end of the week when Bronson was unhooked and his body passed, or his spirit passed on to heaven, his mom had I believe a spiritual encounter in which God said, you need to let your son go. Like, you need to let him go. And she actually, Hayne, this is such a beautiful thing. It's hard to talk about, but the nurse actually said to her, and so if anybody is mourning a loved one who's like in the hospital and you want to do this, especially if it's your child, she asked the nurses, can I just get in bed with them? Can I just snuggle my son? Yeah. And they let her do that. Yeah. And dude, imagine this, Hayne. We had a room full of people while she was in bed with her son singing, It's Well With My Soul,
dude.
But listen to this. Dude. This will drive you mad. Robbie, I'm curious if you knew this happened, but there was a name it and claim it person that was there for this situation and her daughter. And they're out in the lobby praying and speaking in tongues and all that stuff. The lady actually said to Bronson's mom, when she had this revelation, she said, don't you tell me you're giving up on your son. I mean, how effing ridiculous. I mean, she was just like, don't you tell me that I'm giving up on, oh my gosh, that's like a slap in the face. It doesn't even do it justice. Yeah. As far as,
and it puts something that his mom now carries. It puts an emotional weight on her, even though it's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah. Right.
Well, the crazy part about all of it though is, I think that we have to have so much grace for each other in like all this process. I would say like I've become more passionate about education just in general, like not just like academics, but like just in educating ourselves in life. And the thing is that we have come to this point because we've been educated, we've been educated through experiences, through life. Like, you don't say this to a person because this makes them feel this way. That person that said that was not educated to that, And so it's like grace has to get, given in that situation, and hopefully some correction, but like, it's just, I'd say that because like, I think that a lot of times people, like you were saying, Hayne, like they're trying to encourage us, they're trying to, you think about a person that has zero hope, they have zero fuel. And what I think people are trying to do a lot of times is to give us fuel, give us hope, give us encouragement. And it might not be sensitive, but sensitivity is relative, to whoever you're talking to, and
absolutely.
And so it's kind of like, it's a hard thing to balance, because I mean, like, I would say, like, even in my marriage, there's so many things sometimes that we say to each other that it's like, you're being really insensitive, but we just don't know. We don't know that we're being insensitive because the context, her context is way different than my context, and I'm struggling through lots of other things. And so all that to say is like, I think that it is difficult, like, and we definitely educate ourselves, like, to be there for people. And like, I think the perfect summary is what you said earlier, Hayne, of God loves you and he is with you. And I think that's so important, because it's like, no, we don't know if he's going to heal our loved one. We don't know what he's going to do. But the further question past that is like, what does that do for you? Like, what does that do for your belief? What does that do for your trust in this relationship? Like, what is that? What do you know that he is still going to be there, like, through the suffering? Do you know that he's still going to be there?
Absolutely.
Like, is he still going to be your strength? Or was that all just made up?
Yeah. And what's tough for me to admit about that lady that I just want to be mad at is, I understand where she got her theology from.
Yeah.
She didn't make it up. She used scriptures and backed up what she was saying. And two, even she had good intentions. I mean, she wasn't mad at Bronson's mom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like she wished her any harm. And that's a tough one, because I just want to be mad at her. I'm just like, come on, man. But yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to piggyback something you just said, Robbie, going back to that piece of love that God, that you are deeply loved, and there's mystery here. But one of the things for us, and it's an act of faith, but I said this out loud to someone the other day. I said, I don't know if in this time of suffering, if I could worship a God that has not suffered itself.
Yeah.
And to know that, for us to know that not only is he with us, he intimately knows what we're going through. He knows these feelings.
Yeah.
And even though we feel, even though we are going through this incredible amount of pain emotionally, we even know that he feels that. That on the cross, placing faith that event happened and that he was divine, for him to even look at God himself and say, why have you betrayed me? Like he even felt betrayed by the person he trusted the most, the being he trusted the most. We're not going through that kind of betrayal. Maybe betrayal of our bodies. But to know that we are also, that not only does God love us, but this is a God that intimately knows what it's like to suffer. And I don't think I could worship a God that has not been in that spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
I wanted to point out something too, Hayne, because you and I are probably in similar places theologically. Like, we're not sure if all those Old Testament stories are stories or, history. But I just love how Erica, your wife, applied beautifully Jonah. Like,
oh, totally.
I don't know if Jonah got swallowed by a fish and hung out there, but that story is true. There's
the story's true. The story's true. I told someone recently, I think it was Tolkien, and I'm going to totally mess this up, and maybe it wasn't even Tolkien. It could have been.
Was it Dr. Seuss?
Could have been the Brothers Grimm, potentially. I'm not exactly sure, but the quote. I'm going to botch it up. I wish I had it in front of me. Maybe something throw in the show notes at some point. The quote is, "Fairy tales don't teach us that monsters exist. They teach us that monsters can be beaten." Actually, I think the word's dragons. Fairy tales do not exist to teach us dragons are real. They teach us that dragons can be beaten. and that's the truth. That whether we believe that Jonah was real or Job was real.
Job to me is almost very clear that's not a real dude. I mean,
right.
What kind of God says, okay, well, I'll let you do whatever you want with him and he'll still worship me? I mean, that's a middle school God.
Absolutely. And the story doesn't have to be literally true to still be true.
Right.
Hey, it could still be true.
Yeah. So last thing I want to talk about here real quick is you were I was cutting up with you, Hayne, when you were identifying a Jewish person. You were saying he was a Jewish, and that tickled me. But it reminded me of a conversation that I've been having with my brother and my wife. How and I have a theory as to why, but I'm curious what y'all think. How did we come to a place where you can't say Mexicans, you can't say a bunch of Jews, like you can't say these things? And I'm pretty sure I know why. It's because those words, even though they accurately describe that person and there's no offense there when it comes to those words in themselves, they've been used so often in a very negative light. Like, oh yeah, the bunch of Mexicans, they work so hard and they, barely make it, just all these racist things that people say, and they say Mexicans. But isn't that weird though? Like someone from Mexico, you don't call them a Mexican. Like, and I even talked to, Paul Brown, the owner of the Terrace Theater here in Charleston. He's Jewish. And I asked him, I said, hey, there is a difference between saying, hey, Paul is a Jew or Paul is Jewish. And he said, yeah, Jewish is definitely more appropriate than saying he's a Jew. But I just think that's super, super interesting. Do y'all agree with my theory? Is they've just been used in a way that's inappropriately and now they're just not acceptable? Because I mean, the same thing with the R word. I mean, that may be the F word of like politically incorrect stuff is
R word?
A special needs person calling them
that R word. I was like, which R word are we talking about?
Calling them the R word. Like that is a literal scientific condition of someone. Mm-hmm. But it's a measurement. But the word has just been used in a way that now it is unacceptable.
It's been abused, and I think it happens with words and happens with symbols.
Yeah,
right.
Idiot was the same, right? It was a level of a measurement of intellect, I believe, originally. But yeah, I mean, the terms become derogatory over time, and it is a lot of times like it is. That's the hard part about language. Half of the time is like the nuances of language. We're just assigning words that mean feelings. It's like putting feelings into. It's like labeling your feelings, but essentially a lot of these negative feelings have associated with certain terms over time. When I lived in South America, I had to desensitize myself to be called a Negro. Like,
whoa.
Right, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I lived in Ecuador for a year.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Did they call you honky?
God. No, they probably called him
negro negra.
Yeah, so for me, I was a negro, and people, I'm walking down the street and they're like, "Hey, negro, ¿cómo estás?" And I'm like,
They do the same thing to they do the same thing to overweight people. It's gordo or gorda.
Yeah.
Fatty.
Hey, fatty.
Fatties.
Yep.
Hey, fatty. What's
I thought maybe they would call
normal.
you cock for Caucasian. Like, hey, look at the cock. I thought that's me. For Caucasian.
Cock?
Joey!
Can I start calling you cock?
Look at the cock.
Wow. Whoa.
All right, Robbie, end the episode with saying you're a mess, Joey.
You're a mess, Joey. You're a mess.
I expected to have a very normally long for a professor life. Like I'm a professor at a university, and those jobs tend to like really peak at 75. Like you were like, I'm really, you're hitting the big time. Like,
right.
People are really deferential at that point. You have like vast libraries, and I had chosen this very expensive profession. Like, just in terms of my time in my life, I had spent 10 years studying and working toward it, and then I had no health issues in my family, and I figured I've got my whole life to enjoy all the choices, all the good choices I made.
Right.
But then, I was starting to have some stomach pain, and they said it was maybe just a gallbladder or something strange. And then I was just out of the blue diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, which is typically for like older men. It's an uncommon cancer at an uncommon age in someone who completely expected my life to work out just the way I imagined everyone else's would.
Yeah. Do you know like a statistical assessment as far as someone, your gender, your age, and all of that, like the chances of getting colon cancer?
I know. I always feel like I'm living like the reverse of the lottery problem. When people are like, it's a 1 in a million. I always have to. Yeah, it is very well. It is statistically bizarre. And also immediately then put me in kind of an unmapped place because a cancer you shouldn't have. People can't explain, and then they don't know how to treat you. So it kind of put me off of the medical superhighway and onto the like terrible bumpy side service road. Of good luck, sweetheart. So it was, I think
basically you had a potential death sentence. Like this may not work out for you.
I think the first numbers I heard was that I had a 12% chance of survival.
Oh my gosh.
And then I paused because my brain was just always like,
my gosh.
It's always kind of like overheating, and then the doctor got up to leave, and I reached out and I grabbed his hand, and I was like, wait. What does survival mean? Because I realized that I bet he had a number in his mind, and he was, and then the look on his face, and
I was gosh.
like, he's like, yeah, I just 2 years. So,
oh my gosh.
I was like, we're in a different world. We're in a world of outcomes that I like. It kind of just set a whole new math for my life. Now I was sort of swimming against probabilities that I never ever imagined would be mine.
Yeah. And I some people are sensitive about their ages. So if you don't want to allow for people to do their math at home, how old are, like, how many years ago was that?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed at 35, and I then did 2 years of like full-time hospital world. So and then like a lot of surgeries. So then at this point, I'm on my like 8th or 9th belly button. I'm not sure. At some point I just stopped counting. And then because I'm not just chemotherapy, I'm taking a long time to answer this because partly it's the blurriness of the diagnosis that I had, where that math I want to give you is, this is when I was diagnosed, this is how much active treatment that I had, and this is how long I've been in remission. But none of it works like that for me. I had a lot of treatment, and then I had a dramatic reduction in cancer, and then they started calling it a durable remission, as in let's just watch you with really scary eyes for a long time and see how this plays out. And so the longer I go on, the better my odds. But I still have scans every 6 months, and I still have procedures regularly that remove potential new cancers. So I'm like on the Smokey the Bear, like, is there going to be a forest fire range? I'm like somewhere around yellow to orange, depending on, how much, Tinder I'm holding, or how many matches I'm throwing.
Yeah. Gosh, that's insane to wrap my mind around, actually walking through that. Like, I don't want to make any assumptions here, but I'm going to guess that this permanently changed what it feels like to be around Kate. Like, would that be like the person that you were before any of this shit happened? Like, is this like a different Kate we're dealing with?
I guess.
Is that a weird question?
No, it's not a weird question. Yeah, I think our befores and our afters are a fault line. Yeah. And I guess that's always, I think, I hope gives everybody a feeling of freedom in their own life when there's like a divorce or a death or like an undoing of some kind. Yeah. And all the messaging everyone gets is like, well, you just have to get back. You just have to get back to before. Then you'll be better than before. Yeah. And like, I'm positive, are there just 200 self-help books out there at this very moment called Better Than Before? The second I said it, I was like, oh gosh, we gotta get on that train. It's, and I think it's so much better just to say, like, I think that you're changed. You're always going to be changed. I think it also came in seasons too. So when I first got sick, I started trying to make sense of why it felt so hard to explain what was happening to me, or just how sad or angry I was, and everybody, especially my beloved Christian community, there's a lot of everything happens for a reason, and it's just really helpful. God needs an angel, and isn't it okay because at least you a lot of great, at least you had.
But it makes them feel better, Kate. It makes them feel better.
It's the gift I give. It's just making everybody feel so great about their lives. So that was kind of maybe like the first big change I went through was in trying to understand the burden of a crisis and the fact that I was now a tragedy and a problem that everyone felt like they needed to solve over the course of small talk, which was all gone and over. Yeah. Then that's when I started writing. I wrote this it was memoir called Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, because I was trying to think of how much I missed the confidence, the certainty, the feeling that I had, that the problems to the pain of the universe is just that you need to work harder, or that if you're a good Christian, your quality of life is always going to go up. Like it took me a bit to get over the fact that I would never be able to go back to that. Wonderfully arrogant, naive, lovable person.
So real quick, just out of curiosity, how'd you get? Are you and Bill Gates friends? I saw where we're so close. Endorsed your book.
Thank
Y'all
you,
are buddies.
It's like when I'm having a hard time, I just reach out. No, I don't know. I think you just.
Do you disciple him? Is he in your discipleship?
Yeah, group? There's discipleship groups. Wouldn't that be amazing if we all got to choose who we wanted to be? Like, we just volunteer our discipleship. No, I think he just reads a lot of books. So he read.
That's cool.
He read my book out of the blue, but. Joey, what I really need you to take away from that story is that when he reads books, he makes these little videos about them where he summarizes the plot. And he made one where I am a schnauzer as like the main character, and he has like a little medical cone. He has like this little medical cone, and he's like in a little hospital bed, and he's like being wheeled around. And I was like, that's it. Mountaintop. I am officially starring in my own movie as a schnauzer.
Oh my gosh, that's something.
Thank you so much. It all happened so fast.
I was going to ask you about that book. Obviously, I want people to know about that one too. Just snapshot picture. If someone were to come up to you and say, hey, everything happens for a reason, taking into consideration even the... everything is coincidence or everything is destiny or God. Is it like, I've got a pastor friend of mine. I love the fact that, I mean, he's way more conservative than you and I, but he ruffles some feathers big time in the evangelical context when he tells people if God is in control, he's a sucky God. So he kind of has this theological bent that I don't agree with, that we have pretty much been given stewardship over the earth and we're not praying enough, and prayer is the power behind everything. Now he wouldn't be comfortable going into like situation to situation and saying, Kate got through this because she had enough people praying. Eddie didn't because he didn't have enough people praying. But he would say a general rule of thumb is that God said, look, I'm giving you authority, use prayer. But I love the fact that when people say God is in control, he's just like, that's the worst thing that you can tell people. Are you?
Oh my gosh, but he just replaced it with another unbelievably terrible thought, which is,
I agree.
You can choose either the deeply reformed, surrender all agency sovereignty to God. Congratulations, you have a low anthropology, right? A low sense of what people can do, but you have a high view of what God does. But then you've created this invisible causal web that that you don't understand your own actions in. And then every truly terrible thing is then supposed to do what John Piper suggested in his book, Don't Waste Your Cancer, which I cannot tell you how many people gave me. Wait a
second. He has a book called Don't Waste Your Cancer? I knew about Don't Waste Your Life. You're being serious.
Oh, I am all of the serious.
Don't waste your cancer.
But yeah, it's a wonderful thought that all tragedies are tests of character, but it is so punitive for people who suffer that congratulations, your life is now not just unmanageable, but if you don't then experience the deep enriching meaning of your grueling medical problems, or say your ensuing medical bankruptcy, or the fact that it's radically altered all of your relationships and people find you hard to be around because your problems are unsolvable.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't, I hope you know, God has a plan and you better be looking for it, or else you're not just suffering, you're not just suffering, you're failing. So this is the other like field of expertise in which I work, which is Pentecostalism, last 100 and some years of a series of American religious traditions that have the opposite view, which is a very, 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 very sky high view of what people can do. Which is high anthropology. So that is, God has given us inner power. And if you can replace the word pray in a certain, because that is our causal force. If we believe or visualize in a certain way, if we think and then confess with our mouths, if we express confidence, spoken or in our secret hearts, then the world will bend to this causal power. And that is also, sorry for just this very now long rant, that is such an over-realized eschatology. Like the assumption that the kingdom of God is so fully here and that we just have to realize it. I mean, you do ministry. I do ministry. All we see is pediatric oncology and we're having a whole flare up of college age suicides right now because of despair in the pandemic. I mean, the wild amount of evil and sadness in the world make it very hard for me to say, guys, just dig deeper. Yeah. Your secret powers have just not yet been unleashed.
Right. Yeah. And for me, a little more simple-minded than you, it just kind of comes, that's a compliment, by the way. Like, for me, it's like, it just, at the end of the day, there's like a logical realm of, okay, wait a second. We tell people about a loving God that basically set everything up on earth and allowed it to be extremely painful, made it pretty hard to figure out the truth, obviously, because if we all knew about a loving God who had our backs no matter what, we would follow that God. So things are pretty hard to figure out here on this earth. And the people that didn't figure it out, he's going to burn forever and ever and ever and ever. Like that narrative, it just seems so foreign to me now. But even to the point of this whole pain business, like if we were given that sort of stewardship that Chip talks about, what kind of a God would give these little babies responsibility over the deepest, craziest, toughest things in life? Like it's like
where does
a
it
loving
end?
father.
Yeah. Where does it end? Hurricanes? I mean, I'm not being facetious. So I've spent most of my adult life studying a version of this sense that we all have control called the prosperity gospel. And I have seen, sermons by Kenneth and Gloria Copeland, who are also on Trump's religious board of advisors until recently. And they're two of the wealthiest, most famous televangelists in the world.
Do you keep up with all these people? This is my background. Like, I know all these people you're talking about. Like, is it curiosity? You just have to look and see what these people are.
No, at all times. Yeah, my research brain will just, man, I'm just never far away from a spreadsheet about it. But a tornado comes and they will go out into their backyard and they will pray that it will turn because God then gives people control over what we call like natural disasters, or we might call natural evil. And that these little babies you're talking about, we are in charge then of whether or not, hurricanes hit Haiti. Like, the amount of speculation then about who causes what, it feels so, I understand that it goes to this part of our brain that loves causality. It loves the satisfaction of control. But the questions to me are, the solutions are more dishonest than the questions, I think.
Yeah. And I think in defense of evangelicals, I link it all to just an incorrect way of looking at the Bible, because there's obviously scriptures that they hold on to, like if there's a mountain, just by your word, move it out of the way. Mm-hmm. If you ask and believe for anything, you will receive it. I mean, even taking scriptures out of context, like by his stripes you were healed, and all of that. So I'm personally just happy to finally in my life, because I was plagued with tons of religious trauma and all of that, just finally at a place to where it's like, you know what? I believe in God. I'm really, really intrigued by by a creator that loves me, but I'm okay with all these questions. In fact, I was journaling the other day. It's like, I really believe we all don't know what the hell is going on out there. God has graced some of us with this sort of assurance that he's there and he loves us. But bottom line is there's just nobody that really knows what's going on. And there's a lot of pretenders, but it's almost like wrapping my mind around that makes me feel like, okay, there's a lot of people out there that articulate things in a way that makes it seem like they, have all this stuff figured out. But I mean, nobody is. I do want to conspire with you though. We got to figure out a way of getting John Piper to come on a podcast with us to talk about that. Like, I'm thinking if we tell him that Beth Moore is coming on and Mark Driscoll is coming on, we can get him on, and then we'll just say those other two bailed. Will you please talk about your book?
Genius. It's foolproof. It's foolproof. I think I think there was I had a whole season where I received a lot of mail. I had just written a piece for the New York Times that went viral, which I was not prepared for, because I think my email, my work email, is on the bottom or something totally different.
Right.
When I was like, I'm a normal person, no one cares what I think, and then it was just like people had a lot of opinions, and so I received a lot of and the substance of the article was just look, I spent my life studying religious certainty about whether your life is going to work out. And now I know for a fact that my life will not. I would love to let go of some of the painful certainties, holding on to the beauty of this faith that sustains me. But there is some of this stuff I've got to set down. Yeah. And I thought that was going to be more difficult to argue with in people, because I said, I'm surrounded by these different kinds of responses, and a lot of it is minimizing, at least there's a lot of it is solutions oriented, in which there's a spiritual solution, there's a smoothie, there's an essential oil, or there goes right back to which lesson am I not learning? A lot of teaching, or I recently saw this documentary that explains to you why you deserve this cancer. And those categories of, I just said that there's a cruelty in the logic of the perfectly certain. To look at someone like me and then to look at me and then to saddle me with all of their religious questions about whether God is fair. It just felt like of all the people who need to shoulder the weight of that, the suffering don't, we'd rather not be your test case.
Yeah.
You know, and
oh gosh, yeah.
I just thought that seemed
that's powerful what you just said there. Yeah, for sure.
It seemed like a reasonable thought, to be honest with you, but the amount of mail I got that was like, okay, thank you so much for expressing your desire for like a little bit of humility about knowing whether everything always happens. I would actually very much like to give you this new bit of certainty. And so the John Piper book, Don't Waste Your Cancer, was a very short treatise about like kind of doubling down on, because God has a plan, there will be a plan in this, and our job as people is to steward what we learn from that. And the truth of what he's saying is that in these dark and terrible moments, we are broken open to aspects of God and one another that we wouldn't have known before. And that is something I've experienced in the worst moments of my life, is like the power of God's love, which felt impossible, like really impossible. And but it doesn't feel at all though like certainty, though. It just feels a lot more like love.
Yeah. So it's a trite question to ask often, but not in the context of this conversation. I think it's extremely timely. But how does God fit into your story when I'm assuming, unless you're, gosh, now I forgot, unless you're an open theist, I would, and maybe you are, but I would assume that maybe you and I both would agree that God can stop anything from happening if God wants to.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your story, it's obviously not as simple as God wants you to persevere and build character. So he
he
gave
loves
that to you.
Character. Oh
right?
my
He just
gosh,
loves it. Oh hell yeah,
so
character.
into it.
I'll do anything for it.
I'll make you do anything for it.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So where is God in your story from Kate's perspective?
I guess that has been, and I think honestly, if we were talking a couple years ago, the answer might be a little bit different than it is now.
Oh, people change. Awesome. I didn't know that. Cool.
Well, I guess I've been thinking of it because I've had a chance to live a little bit with the uncertainty. Because at first the question for me was, because it was so sudden and it was so awful and it was just taking my life apart. I mean, in the States, as you know, it's a tragedy is not just a tragedy. It's a revolution in whether you have any savings, in whether anyone else ever gets to go on vacation, in paperwork, in talking to somebody named Linda in HR. I mean, it's the erasure of a future and then a replacement of it with like a maybe we could, and a lot of it's like having to build a house for yourself at the edge of a cliff. And be like, and then you're making dinner, but you can sort of feel the upward draft. So that felt, so at first I think I was just trying to be like, why? Like, why am I here at the cliff? And then after a while, like the question was like, well then God, like, how do I live like this? And I think part of it is, how do we live like this? How do we live with chronic uncertainty, knowing that an earth plague can descend and undo all of our lives in a minute? How do we live with the not yetness of the kingdom of God that you're describing? In which I loved your description where you're like, it's not very clear. There's there's truths, but they're not very obvious. Right. You have to play detective, but like the clues are just garbage.
And there's some people that are saying, give me better clues because I want to believe in a God.
Yeah. But they're hidden under a rock with a bear trap. Yeah. Because at first, the weird, wonderful gift of the crisis was that I felt God's presence more intensely in my life than I ever have before. And like, I would not have, I mean, I'm a historian. I'm not a feelings I would not describe my feelings to you. Yeah. Before that, I'll give you like a strong argument that begins with a sentence in the late 19th century. Like I would have argued for things, but I wouldn't, but the feeling of waking up from surgery and knowing immediately that I did not feel disposable, that I felt like truly loved.
Right.
And not loved by the community that I have, but like loved by God. I felt confused. It was so strong. And I like went around to I work at a divinity school, so I work with these other, theologians and historians and people who are like forever reading Augustine for reasons I can't explain. And and I was like, hey, sorry, thanks so much for seeing me. Weird question. Why do I feel like a mystical love of the Lord right now? Because that's never happened. And I went to summer camp. Like I put my hands up during all the services and I've never had this feeling. And I said, I feel like bubble wrapped and I can tell this feels supernatural. And that seems so embarrassing to admit.
Why do you say that? Why do you say super embarrassing to admit?
Because I studied faith healing. I've been to sounds like you have too. I've been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of services meant to create that feeling.
Right.
So I know what it's supposed to look like, and I know what it's supposed to feel like, and there is a synthesizer. But like, what if you just wake up in this beep, 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 horrible hospital room that always smells like burnt grilled cheese, and all you can taste is the saline in your mouth, and you can't move because everything under your gown is bandages that you genuinely don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But then you still feel weirdly, intensely special. Like that needed some explanation for me. Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, hey, is this God? And then, which I knew, but, And they were like, oh yeah, that is because God draws near the suffering. Like God truly loves us when we are like really broken. Yeah. And there was no like, I woke up and I said a prayer, or like there was no will. I frankly find that so wild that like I was not a better Christian. I didn't believe more clearly. God just like scoots up close to us when we have nothing left. And that I came to know to be God. But then I was like, well, so I asked friends and they were like, oh yeah, that goes away. That is like it's like a gift. It's like a sweetness that God gives, but it can be, but it will go away, but then we'll have to learn to live without it. And I think that was what I was trying to make sense of, is going back to living in a world in which God's presence is not obvious.
Gosh, I've experienced similar things, not to that degree, but as I have but majorly changed in my faith, there's been very scary times when it's like, oh shoot, that's a big one that I'm not sure if I believe anymore. And there would be times when because God, spirituality, religion, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, has always been like the centerpiece of my life, for the majority of it in a very bad way. But, I think about all of that kind of stuff that I went through, and there would be times when I was, like I said, I felt like a scared little kid, and I would feel this supernatural from nowhere. I wasn't praying, I wasn't thinking intently, and it was just like a peace and comfort. Made me feel like a child. It made me feel so loved, and it would go away. But what's crazy, it was so powerful. It for me, it was God sending a message of, I'm here, you're fine. Like, don't be scared. Like, I'm here. I got you. I had so my therapist has similar backgrounds as, it sounds like, us, and now she has helped me a lot with my religious toxicity and all of that, and she's a Buddhist now, and she kind of broke down. So I had a bad mental health crisis 2 years ago. I been looking at my journal from 2 years ago because I was kind of I was at a point where I just couldn't do anything for myself, so I just listened to whatever my wife said. She said she wanted me to journal how I feel every day, so I journal how I feel every day. So this time 2 years ago, I was just out of the hospital and going into there was about three days of being suicidal, and my therapist, she said that basically all unsettled, like when we feel unsettled in our spirit, it's typically fear of losing something that we don't want to lose, or desiring something that we don't have that we want to have. And golly, like when I think about the unsettled feelings, you can kind of put that in that sort of compartment, I guess you could say. And when I was thinking about what you went through, like, I wonder, what would you say to this idea of someone kind of taking inventory of how they want their life to turn out, things that they desire, things that they're hoping goes a certain way, and then maybe making peace with all of those things maybe not ever happening? Like, is that kind of doom and gloom and negative Nancy, or would that be a powerful measure of acceptance?
Yeah. Acceptance is such an interesting problem. Because I think I imagine, so I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, because as one of the cultural scripts that we get, this is when I was writing No Cure for Being Human, and I was trying to think, because I love studying the history of these cultural cliches we're given, and one of them is make a bucket list. Awesome. But make a bucket list is like this perfect encapsulation of what you're describing, where you're like, great, catalog your desires, and then is the point of then being this evolved kind of person to be able to let that all go. And I was encouraged to make a bucket list when I was by a whole group of people, all seemingly named Caitlin, in the cancer center, and I immediately began to research it, only then, of course, to realize that it was only a popular term after the 2007 movie with Morgan Freeman, which I thought I was like, oh, as a historian, that is the most boring. But the impulse is ancient, like this feeling that we want to have really lived. And the temptation then is to create a whole series of experiences that we can count and check off to know that we have completed a valuable life. And, there's like Instagram accounts of like bucket list families. And I think the American desire to have this kind of experiential capitalism is so strong, but, is the solution then, if we want to not be the person that tries to check off all the boxes, is the solution then to let it all go? And I actually think that is not a very Christian thought. I think it is a very Buddhist thought. I think it is a very Stoic thought, because we agree on courage. We agree that life requires courage, and part of that is facing the things that, the realities of our lives as they are. But the question of whether our desires can still be Christian is one that I've thought a lot about, because the question for me was, well, if I have to make this life really meaningful, but the life might be short, like, is it okay to still want things?
Right.
Or would a better Christian, like, let it all go?
Right.
And I think the bad version is still always the checklist, because the things that truly are soulful and enriching and gorgeous to us are like, the smell of their hair, the like long, hilarious joke on joke you have with your friend about their ex-boyfriend, all the things that make your life specific and gorgeous would never, like, the thing that would be on the list is Disneyland. When you go there, you're like, I cried in the parking lot, but I could have just been really, really tired. So I guess I now kind of think that that our desires are Christian, in the Christian tradition. They are still good. Yeah. They just need to be, we need to hold them with loose hands. But the fact that we're always hungry, I think, is just our desire for life itself. And that, like, good things can make us even feel starving. Like, when I look at my kid with his giant Google eyes, like, I I could never picture a world in which I could check off any series of experiences in which I wouldn't want more. So I think for Christians, and this is a different answer than for Buddhists or Stoics or any others, I think desire is not the enemy. I think we're allowed to want.
Yeah. Yeah. Kate, this is like really, really awesome. Like, golly, this is so helpful for me personally. Where do you, like, you're obviously not a sugarcoater or a beat around the bush sort of person. Where do you put pain? Richard Rohr talks about love and pain being the biggest change agents. Like, do you reflect on everything that you went through and say things like, because I think I would say this about my mental health crisis. I'm glad I went through it because I'm better off, but I don't know if I would put it in the beautiful category.
No,
you know,
I don't even know if you even have to, and you don't mean to decide this for you, but I don't even think you need to use words like glad or better, because I think, and this is why I started my podcast called Everything Happens, period, because this is exactly the question that every episode is kind of about in some way, which is, we find these little bits of things we would never have known. We find these like gorgeous treasures in the midst of our beautiful, terrible lives. Yeah. But there will be no version in which we wish they would have happened, or don't, or want to say that there's a math there that like one makes the other somehow okay. Because pain is, I'd like to think I would have been cracked open, maybe just to the pain, like some of the things that I've learned, in another way. Like I could have watched a series of great documentaries. Maybe I wouldn't have to constantly almost die to get that. Right. But that we can say in our lives, I am better for this, but no one should make us say it. And we shouldn't confuse it with having learned these life-changing truths. Yeah. There's just no good math on pain. And I don't think it's good to romanticize it. And I don't think it's good to describe it as like the first word out of our mouths should not be like instructive. The first word out of our mouths should just be horrible. Like, because the truth is, like, we're just like, look at us. We're just made of all this. It's all soft. All of it is delicate dominoes. We're just giant Jenga games close to the end. So I think the fact that we experience pain so quickly means that we're made good. I don't think God desires our pain. And that's why we worship a God who suffered so that we know he knows. Right. But not so that we might suffer. Yeah. So there's just like I want no romantic pain. I'm not happy I went through it. I can see that I can see the truth more clearly now than I could before. But like, man, I think what God wants for us is to be drawn into a story about love, and I really don't want it to include the gauntlet for everybody.
Yeah, you beat me to it about your podcast. I wanted to ask you about that. So that's one less question and more time in your day. But let me ask you, this is kind of a wrap up. And then I do have a question about No Cure for Being Human. Is your beliefs on the afterlife, or let me put it this way, is your beliefs on pain and the human experience greatly influenced by your belief in the afterlife? And I'll just give you an example. For me, when it was as simple as, if you don't figure out the formula, you burn in hell forever. I couldn't get out of my head people like my aunt, who had a horrible divorce and some really bad things happened to her. So she turns to drugs, and then she becomes an addict, and then she just starts throwing her life away. She has a horrible, miserable time with sickness and cancer. And I'm like, she just died and woke up burning Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just that sort of train of thought where pain on this earth was not only senseless, but it just felt so barbaric, because I used to think to myself, most people that go through the worst things on earth, I'm being taught that pain is just going to ramp up times a billion and last forever and ever. Whereas now I think pain is a lot more, I wouldn't say easy to wrap my mind around, but now having more of a universalistic outlook on the afterlife, it's like the phrase that always comes to my mind is God saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Like at some point in your existence, everything is going to be okay forever. So I guess I'm just curious, when you think about pain and the human experience, is that linked to your belief in eternity?
Yeah, I think
the afterlife.
I was very grouchy about this topic for a very long time. I think because most of the sort of like, but don't worry assurances were that, you know, like mansions in heaven. And I think people were treating it as a solution to the devastation in my life. And so because of that, I was like, don't talk to me about heaven. I mean, heaven is a place where I miss it. I miss it all.
Right.
And like that, that just, all I've wanted was to see my kid get older. Like, so I just, that made me full of rage. But I do think there's, but that we're Christians. And so we are given a story about hope, and hope is like an anchor dropped into the future, where God like is like pulling in the anchor, like pulling everybody in the world toward God, toward a story of wholeness, and where it really will be okay.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. I just don't believe that it necessarily, that hope is the same thing as like hope that my life will work out. It feels like it becomes hope for all of us.
Yeah.
I guess but in that way, the bit about the afterlife, it feels like, you know, we're in such Americans are like such a future obsessed people. They just tilt forward. It's like they're walking into a heavy wind at all times. They're just always stooped forward. And so I can see why heaven can sometimes get put right in front of us to be like, what are we supposed to be throwing ourselves toward? And I think it's okay to feel, I love the loopiness, honestly, of the way that scripture talks about time. I mean, it doesn't make, it's just the best circle. It's like, well, the Spirit of God is hovering around in the waters of creation before we know anything about the Trinity, and Jesus has a bedtime, but is also there in the foundations of the earth, and you know, everybody is the same age in heaven. I love the loopiness of it.
Right.
And I think maybe, I don't know, Anne Lamott said this the other day, where she said, I feel like God loves us, like sees us as if we were in the moment of our greatest faith. No, maybe that was Philip Yancey. Geez, sorry. I'm having a lot of like too many inspirational people around lately, but it did make me think that sometimes the feeling like, you know, life is so long. And sometimes we're like we feel like we're accumulating all of these screw ups and sadnesses and moments of insight, and then and then just email. So I think if we imagine our lives like a circle instead of like a line, we do get moments where, like in our best, most beautiful moments, we know true things, we are loved completely, and it really will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, no cure for being human, and other truths I need to hear. I was thinking yesterday, I picked my son up from soccer, and he gets in the car and gives me a bunch of 9-year-old problems. I say that lightheartedly, but I could tell, I know my son, I could tell he was tearing up about things that from my perspective were just, this is nothing, but I understand for a 9-year-old, it's a big deal. But there was something in me as a father, I just wanted to give him my 44 years of life experience with getting healthier in my brain. Like I haven't reached anything, but just getting healthier and healthier, seeing life for what it is and not worrying about certain things and thinking about other things and all of that. And I was like, you know what? I can't do that. Like there's no possible way, obviously stating the obvious, but there is something about time and intentionality with becoming healthier in your brain that nothing can replace. Like he's going to have to worry about things that probably wouldn't be worthy of his time. He's going to have to go through heartbreak and all that stuff. There's no cure for being human. You know, you're going to have to go through that sort of thing. So it's on my list to read. I wanted to ask you, would you put this in the category of a memoir, like storytelling for the purpose of solidarity? You know, is there philosophical theology? Like what's this new book about?
Yeah, it's about trying to move forward with the lives we don't choose. And so part of it is because I'm a historian and I study self-help and I study the cliches we use. So it's my life. But in there is trying to explore the different kinds of advice that I got about how to live. So be present. What are the strengths and hysterical limitations of only living in the present? You know, YOLO, you know, just do what you love. All the different kinds of formulas that we're given for how to really, really live. And I think it's me trying to survive some difficult things, but I think for me, the truth is that it's the truth of all of us, which is that life is a chronic condition.
Yeah.
And that, and getting to just try what I really want to do always is to just make a little bit more language for all of us who know that. And so how to create this more nuanced way of saying, like, instead of like, nonstop, just be present. Then we might say, well, I mean, or like no regrets, be like, well, sometimes facing the past is part of facing the future, or instead of, just endless every day of Friday, best life now. You know, we can say like, but also naps and mediocrity is fine and was never a sin, truly, ever until the 70s. So I just giving people a little gentler language about how to live. That part feels like it's about me, but not really about me at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, a big congrats. Sometimes at the end of the interview, I like to call these conversations. Thank God it didn't feel like an interview. Hopefully it didn't for you. But sometimes I'm super curious, like what's someone's Enneagram number? Do you know your Enneagram number?
Do you want to guess? It's
I was gonna guess. This is uncomfortable because
I know.
Like, I don't want to be those numbers.
No, I'm excited now.
But I would say a 5 or an 8 is what.
The 8, because I told you needed to know that I was Canadian. Which is like the most Canadian thing. We need everyone to know that immediately.
You got to give my 43-year-old foggy brain a little bit of slack there. Are you an 8?
No. I always have friends that are 8s, though, because they're so scary in a fun way, which I like.
I don't think you're scary.
I always I am scary in the classroom, and my students do describe me as scary in a fun way, which makes me so happy.
How you think analytically and all of that. That's why I guessed.
That's fun. 5. I'm a super intense 2 with a 3-wing. Gotcha. I'm like if a golden retriever became a person, but then had an interest in religious history. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like when I hear someone's stories, like sometimes, and I'm by far from an Enneagram expert, I feel like I have the basics, but sometimes I think, Kate, that probably would have been even harder for you, what you went through if you were a 7. Like, I just think in Enneagram numbers sometimes, like, oh, man, I don't know if a 7 could have handled what you went through.
Well, I guess it's kind of weirdly, when I was done writing the book, we looked through the chapters, and me and my beautiful team here and realized that almost every advice corresponds with an Enneagram number. And so there's ones in each one, like the YOLO chapter would be wonderful for 7s. And the vocation, like what's wonderful for 5s. And so it did make me realize that certain people gravitate to a different sort of life advice based on their personalities.
I'm sorry, I missed probably that 30 seconds because we went out, but I'm sure it was good, and I'm going to hear it again.
So rich and deep. Yeah,
so
thank
awesome.
You, Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really has been a pleasure and honor, and big congrats.
Aw, thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Have you got any questions?
Nope. Sounds great.
Sweet. So are you actually originally from Durham? Like the North Carolina area? Where are you from?
Oh, no, Joey.
You moved here because you were super smart and you went to Duke.
Joey, I put this in all my books. I am so Canadian. Now I'm concerned. Where are you getting your information from? I'm that Canadian that brings it up all the time. Oh God, now you don't know me at all.
I've got the I think